yourself to mind your own business. You are a woman who manages her own set point. So ladies, keep your hand in your skirt.
Hello, welcome. Keep your hands in your skirt. Have you been keeping your hand in your skirt? Minding your own business, managing your own set point. Today's topic, what is today's topic? Today's topic is cult. Cult-like activity, cult-like beliefs, cult-like organizations. Did you see Bentinho Sucks, part 1 and part 2 cult podcast? Bentinho Sucks. So what we're going to talk about, spiritual cults. I was in a cult. I'm going to tell you how to help someone who's in a cult. My opinion, the best thing you can do for someone who's in a cult, and how to be mindful for yourself, how to protect yourself from giving your power away. So let's get into it. Bentinho, oh my gosh. Now, I'm not surprised at all that Bentinho has a cult. I was introduced to him maybe 10 plus years ago. Because I do come from a cult, I've been in a cult, I'm attracted to cults. Why are people attracted to cults? We'll get into that today too. So when I saw him talk, it was easy to identify he positions himself as guru and he wants followers. And that's one of the things a cult leader will do. They want followers. That's their fuel. That's their nutrition, is to feed off the energy of people worshiping them, people giving their power to him or her. In this case, him, Bentinho. So I instantly saw that he possessed, that he owns those qualities. He really, it's obvious he wants to be a guru and he wants a following. But at the same time, it's confusing. And this is where the slippery slope goes, because he has a lot of great information. He resources, he knows, right? He's connected to an aspect of his multidimensional self that he resources fantastic information. One of my favorite things from him was the Declaration of Free Will. Right? So I even made a video on my Sabrina Brightstar YouTube channel about the Declaration of Free Will. Now I'll have to go and remove that because I don't want to encourage anyone to be manipulated by someone who is intentionally a psychopath manipulating people. So the podcast comes from a couple who was also in a cult. They were in a cult called, or they created a documentary called The Vow, and they share how they, what happened to them in this cult and how they got out. And then they started a podcast as a couple. They have fantastic energy. Their podcast is called, It's A Little Culty. I'm going to put the links in below, so I really hope you check out, for sure check out the Bentinho podcast on their podcast, and then continue to check out their documentary and the work that they're doing. So this couple now, because they know firsthand, right, the damage of getting involved in a cult, the damage of turning over your power to someone, so now they're helping people. So some of Bentinho's, this one girl from Bentinho, I guess in 2020, actually reached out to Sarah, the wife of the couple that does the podcast. She reached out just for help, because first of all, cults have a spectrum. And a lot of times people don't really think of cults as on the spectrum, right? And on a spectrum, you can be extreme, like the 10, and you can be very, much more subtle, much more minor, a 1. So of course the extreme cult-like experiences, you don't have any of your own money, you don't make any of your own choices, you have to have permission for what you're allowed to eat. So literally to bust free, to break free, is so difficult because you don't have people or the resources to break free. So Sarah, the wife, the girl from Bentinho's cult contacted her apparently in 2020. I was told that. I don't know for sure. but wouldn't say who the cult leader was. Just turn to someone for help, right? Just a resource for emotional support, for like how do, like, I gave up my life for this. Now what do I do? How do I come back to reality? How do I function? And Sarah helped her. And then as the girl got healing, over the months and years, as she got healing, and as some other people left the cult, they got the courage to name the cult leader Bentinho. So I really hope you check out that video. And, I think it's so important. Many of us in the spiritual community, we're attracted, right? We're really attracted to organizations, to people who seem enlightened, who seem like they're here for, right, a benefit. And so to pass on this information, I think is super crucial. So why do people get involved in cults? Well, that couple I was telling you about that started this podcast, A Little Culty, they have a tagline, which is brilliant. And the tagline is, no one joins a cult. People join, they join what feels good. People join what feels good. And cults, what they do is they appeal to your human needs. Tony Robbins talks about humans have 6 basic human needs. And cult leaders, cult organizations appeal, they pull on your human needs. So for example, the cult I got involved in for over a decade, I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it totally, in the beginning, I was a perfect fit. I was the perfect fit for this organization because there was a whole group of people that wanted to worship God more than an hour on Sunday. They wanted to be Christians or followers of Christ 24/7. And that appealed to me. I'd always wanted that kind of dedication or relationship with God. So when I found this community, so I got instantly, I got involved in this community. I felt like so many of my human needs were met. I felt like I was loved unconditionally by this group of people. And it's so, it's attractive. It summons you. It's a magnetic attraction. So that's one of the reasons we get pulled into cults. Another reason that a lot of people don't realize is if you do a full birth chart of where all the planets are at the time and location of your birth, you can actually see if you've been imprinted, if your human design is geared to really take a deep dive into the spiritual realm, into the mysticism, into the unknown. And I have a lot of planets in the house of spirituality. And so it even predicts in my birth chart that it's a good probability that I've been in a cult, or I'm attracted to cults, or, I weave in and out of them. And I do. And what has been fascinating for me, someone who was deep, totally followed the rules to a T, like I was very submissive. I was very good at being in that cult. What happens when you're really good at it, even if you can break free, even if you start to realize you're turning your power over to someone else, to something else, and you can break free, you can still hold a lot of the patterns that make you susceptible. So I want to talk also about, let's talk about the on the spectrum of cult activity, cult brainwashing, cult control, cult manipulation. It can be very gentle. It can be very light. It can be just a 1 or a 2. Right? And so think about different things that you believe in, because what is a cult? A cult is where you turn your power over, you turn your internal knowing or wisdom over to someone or something else. And you think someone or something else knows more about you than you. And so you no longer trust you no longer turn to your intuition or your internal guidance. You go and you look for outside validation. You go to look for outside permission for your choices. So now this, maybe people have never thought of this, but think of health communities, health and wellness communities. I know vegans, for example. I knew someone that prefers to be a vegan, but it's also was spiritually like peer pressure to be vegan in this town that she lived in. And she was, her body was calling to have some kind of seafood, salmon, something, which usually she would never have. And so she had one time told me that she had gone to the store, but she was hiding the food that she got because she didn't want any of her friends or people in her circle to see she was purchasing and going to eat the seafood. So that's a very minor example compared to giving your money over to someone, compared to giving, you know, all your choices over to someone. But when you're afraid of being shamed, you're afraid of guilt, you're afraid of consequences for the food your body chooses or you want, like that's a form of cult. That's a form of control and manipulation. So I think it's just really wise to be mindful, and let's just ask the questions. It's free and easy to ask yourself, like, am I functioning from any beliefs, any programs that I'm turning my power over to someone else? Am I needing someone outside of me to give me validation, right? It could be education. Maybe like you buy into the program that in order to be successful, you have to have a certain amount of degrees or certain amount of training from certain place. Is that a cult-like program? Is it someone else's decision and you feel in order to feel good about yourself, in order to feel successful, you have to follow someone else's formula to get that validation, to get that feeling of worthiness? Right? Most people don't think of education as being a cult-like activity or a cult-like container, but actually, if you become aware that there's a spectrum of outside control and manipulation happening, and it's so easy to really identify the extreme cults, right? Like Bentinho, the extreme cult, the vow, how they turn all of everything over, right? Turn everything over to someone outside of you. They get to own you. Like you basically become a slave to the programming, to what the rules are, and you lose all free will. And so I think this topic is fascinating. So if you know someone in a cult, what can you do to help them? And I'm going to share my experience, my belief about the best thing to do to help someone in a cult. And this might surprise you, but usually when you sense someone else is in a cult, either they're deep into it or they're just getting started, or maybe you can even reflect on your own self, like, oh my gosh, I'm really fascinated by all this stuff. I tend to find myself attracted to these different teachers, these different leaders, these different communities. Like what do I do to take care of myself? So here's my bottom line belief of the most important thing you can do for yourself or someone else, and that is trust that you've got this, you can handle this. If you go to and start projecting worry, right? You're watching somebody you love start to give away their power, give away need validation, give away their sovereignty. If you start to notice that, and then you start to worry, like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? They're in this relationship, they're with a psychopath, they're with a narcissist, or they're in this religion, or right, they're in this community, and they're like, and you can see them going down the rabbit hole. Well, projecting worry does not help them. You might feel like that's useful, but it's not. It just adds to the victimizing. Do you see what I mean? Like you're worrying about someone just adds to the victim mindset, to the victim mentality. So instead, or I would like to offer the idea of realize people, they're stronger than we think. I'm stronger than I think. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get to the other side. And when someone believes in me, when someone sees me dabbling, right? Because even since I left, right? I left an extreme cult, but I've been dabbling in minor, like, you know, on the spectrum. I've been dabbling in from 1 to 5, you know, cult-like people, cult-like organizations, cult-like, right? And I have people that they just trust me. They trust that I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna get to the other side. I'm gonna develop the awareness, like something's wrong. You know, something's gonna click one day. I'm gonna realize. So in the meantime, you know, they're great listeners. They're supportive. They don't shame me. They don't guilt trip me. Right? Like, because guilt doesn't work either, especially when you really, really believe what you're doing. Like when I was deep into it, my family wanted to pull me out and to reprogram me, apparently, to like do an intervention, I found out after I left. But even if they would have taken me against my free will, I would have gone back, right? Because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I hadn't seen the side effects. I wasn't able to see the damage and the control and the abuse. And even when I was starting to see the abuse and when I was starting to like kind of tell the abuse, like it unfolded in layers. And if someone would have came to me and like forced something on me or made me feel bad about myself, I would have just stopped talking to them. So if you see somebody, just be a good listener. Just support them. Let them know if you ever, want a place to stay, if you ever need to call in the middle of the night, let them know, hey, no matter what, I'm here for you. And I know you got this. You're a smart person. You're going to figure out the best path for you. I trust you. And that is so empowering to do for one another. We got to trust each other that even if we've created a mess, even if we've been attracted to a cult-like terrible situation, we are resilient human beings. And some of us signed up to have these extreme experiences. Like you look at my birth chart, I signed up to be a person easily, highly manipulated. So I've been easily and highly manipulated. And that's okay, right? That's okay. And the other thing that people don't realize about people who are attracted to these types of groups or activities, a lot of the pattern, right? Because remember, we know that the body holds familiar patterns. So your body holds on to familiar patterns. What's familiar is what you gravitate to. So for example, if you're a child and you didn't get some of your basic human needs met, maybe you didn't feel seen or heard in your family. And so what you learn to do is you learn to figure out how to get mom and dad to see and hear you. Maybe if you get good grades, they see and hear you. Maybe if you are a performer and you're in the school plays and dance, they see and hear you. So you learn to become who you feel like you need to be in order to get your needs met. And so it's very comfortable, very familiar to cut off pieces of yourself with people. It's very comfortable to compromise. Like, oh, I want to be in this relationship. Oh, I want this friendship. Well, in order for this friendship to work, I have to compromise pieces of who I am. Right? And then you think, oh, well, that's okay. That's familiar. I'm used to cutting off parts of me. I'm used to, dismissing or ignoring important pieces of who I am in order to make this person happy. Right? So compromise is just a familiar thing for you. So then you get into an extreme organization where you have to compromise your money, or you have to compromise, what foods you're allowed to eat. That's familiar. Oh, well, right? Because you're doing it for something right? You think the payoff is going to be worth it. And unintentionally, you've been programmed to be a person who makes sacrifices for the payoff, for getting one of your basic human needs met. So, it's fascinating. It's so fascinating to observe the system. I'm dazzled by it. I don't, I even though I've been in it, I've experienced so many toxic, unhealthy relationships because it's familiar, you know, like different organizations. But the great thing is I do know, like, ooh, this organization or this belief system that I really, really like also has components, also has aspects, ingredients that you're turning your power away. And one of the things I think is interesting about turning your power away is when they flip it and they like gaslight you and say, we're not turning your power away. So for example, one thing that I really like is access consciousness. Totally love access consciousness, has so many of my core beliefs. But like I could identify right away that this is the type of organization I want to jump both feet in and totally go crazy, right? Like, and I had the awareness about myself that if I would go in and become a facilitator, one of their certified facilitators, I would do the deep dive. I would attract, right, a lot of people interested in their material. I would be a fantastic spokesperson for their material because I personally totally believe it. Plus, you know, when you believe something, people can tell that you're like sincere, it's the real deal, and that attracts people. But I also knew there's so many rules. There's so many rules to becoming a certified access facilitator. One of the rules is just, it's a money thing. Just to qualify, I did the math. I don't know what it is at this now moment, but when I did the numbers, just to get your certified facilitator's license was like $25,000 to $30,000. And then to renew it every year was around $20-some thousand. I don't know for sure, but it was like a substantial amount of money, and it's an annual renewal that you have to like meet the new criteria every year to sustain your license. And so, I mean, are there a lot of phenomenal pieces of information there? Yes. Does it make my heart sing? Yes. But does it have the potential to take away your power? Yes, and maybe the organization, and like this is what they would say when I would talk about the abuse with Jehovah's Witnesses, right? My husband was so effing abusive, right? He was so mean to me. And I had to follow what he said because he's the head of the house, right? That's what they tell you. He's oh, Sister Brown, you have a good man there. Oh, a good man? Really? I have to go to the bathroom and he won't stop the car to let me go to the bathroom, and I can't cry or be upset because he's the head of the house and I have to do what my husband tells me? Come on. I mean, that's just a tiny little example of the control and the manipulation that happened in that relationship. But right, so then if you say, well, like it's abusive, well, then they say, well, people are imperfect. Jehovah's not imperfect, right? But then they have all of these unloving behaviors that happen. And if a God is really that loving, if the whole premise of the Bible is love, like, no, I don't think God, right? That's my interpretation. I don't think God is abusive like that, right? So, but they do, they twist it. So like with Access Consciousness, I've gone to so many of their seminars, really, really enjoy them. I'll continue to go to them, very much enjoy them. But I have the awareness that just because I go doesn't mean I have to buy the Kool-Aid, right? Like, so, and what I've noticed at the seminars when you go to them, because one of the things they teach you in Access Consciousness is trust you, no matter what, trust you and your body, no, trust you. Well, you go to one of the classes and the facilitator's telling you what you need to do. And you're like, no, I don't think so. And then they're like, well, this is the way we do it. Well, what happened 2 minutes ago? You said, trust me, trust what me and my body know. But now I'm being told like, oh, how you're doing that process is wrong because there's the proper way to do it and you're doing it the wrong way, right? Like that's gaslighting. Like pick a lane and stick with it. If you trust me, then let me show up and do the process the way that me and my body know it should be done. So just in awareness, right? Just function from awareness, function from what's going on here. If you feel called, if you feel pulled to these type of magnetic people, if there's something about the information that resonates with you, enjoy it. Like you don't have to hide from any cult-like narcissistic psychopaths, but just do it with choice, do it with awareness. And if you ever do study psychopaths and narcissists, or how to break free from cult-like organizations or cult-like control and manipulation, one of the first things you learn to do is, if you want to keep doing it, that's fine. Like, don't judge yourself. Like, don't add to the guilt by judging yourself and feeling like a rotten person. But they said, just make your choices from awareness. So instead of functioning on autopilot, where you're just blindly trusting them, blindly doing what you're told, blindly like being submissive and you know, making sure that they're happy, that they're pleased with you, that they're not going to get mad at you, instead of blindly turning your power away. If you are going to give your power away, or you are going to jump through hoops to make this other person happy, or you are going to like care more about their needs being met than your own needs being taken care of, if you are going to choose to do some of these things, just be aware. Like, hey, I'm choosing to do this. Because what happens when you give away your power by choice, you're not giving away as much power. You see what I mean? Because like the control people, like their food, their fuel, their nutrition is your energy. And so when they're getting your energy, because you're unaware, you're unconscious, they get more, like the volume is bigger. Does that make sense? Whereas if you're aware, like, hey, I know, like, I'm doing something that I don't really want to do. I'm willing to make a sacrifice here to make you happy. It's not really what I want to do, but I'm aware that I'm being manipulated, or I'm aware I'm going to be punished if I don't do things the way you want me to do things. There's going to be hell to pay. So yeah, they're still getting you, right? Like, they're still getting power from you. They're still getting nutrition from you, but the volume, the intensity is not as much. And so the more you can, if you want to do it, don't judge yourself, just go ahead and do it. But that's why it's one of the first steps in deprogramming yourself, because then the more aware you can be, the more conscious you can be with your thoughts, with your choices, then you realize that there's more choices. Right? There's other relationships to be in. There's other organizations that could make your heart sing. There's other thought leaders that have integrity. Like, you just become aware. There's more choices, more options. So check out the Bentinho. It's so disappointing, isn't it? It's so disappointing. But the podcast is brilliant. The survivors are amazing. The warmth, you know, and that I sincerely, even though I've been hurt, I've been burned, I've been like deep in my pain body from, you know, hurtful people, I don't consider myself a victim. You know, I've gotten so much, I've learned so much, I've discovered so much. And when you actually like can break free, when you can break free from a cult-like mindset, a cult-like behavior, a cult-like control, manipulation, you just start to trust yourself more. You just start to believe in yourself more, and your self-esteem, your set point, your self-value, it just starts to raise and raise and raise. And you know, this happens in layers. It happens in layers, you know, especially with these patterns, right? Many of us have been wounded from, you know, young age, where we didn't understand things. And those who wounded us, you know, they didn't understand things either. This generational wounding has just been passed on, right? And, you know, we've hurt each other. We've hurt our families unintentionally. So just realize that this healing, you know, this healing happens in layers. And, you know, just look, are you giving your power away to anyone? Are you giving your value to anyone? Are you needing someone to validate you, to tell you that you matter, to tell you that you're smart or you're beautiful? If you're giving away any of your power, just an awareness. Is that what you want to continue to choose? How can you start to get your power back? How can you start to get your sovereignty back? How can you start to make your choices from your own intuition, from your own wisdom, from your own customized connection to the truth of who you really are? So I hope this has been helpful. Again, if you know anyone in a situation like this, you know, really try not to worry about them. Try to realize, you know, we're all on this journey of polarity. We're all inside this, you know, on this planet. We live on a planet of polarity. We have contrast, and contrast is just an opportunity, for breakthroughs, right? For an opportunity to expand, to grow, to discover more about who we are, to discover more on how to actualize our own power, and to get that self-respect from the inside out. Thanks.
Manage your own set point. Use tools to change your vibration. Raise your set point. Thank you for listening to the Keep Your Hands in Your Skirt podcast. Make sure to subscribe and please leave a review. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll catch you in the next episode.